A large protruding forehead, saggy wrinkled jawline, gaping nostrils with a bulbous nose, large round ears, a wrinkled face dressed under layers of elegant drapery are the trademarks of Quentin Mastis's ugly duchess. As wild as it may seem, this grotesque figure speaks against traditional beauty standards during the Renaissance and the modern world today, encouraging the fight against traditional beauty norms. Born in 1466, Quentin Mastis was a master of his craft during the Northern Renaissance, a period marked by a revival of interest in the classical arts and humanism. It was characterized by idealized beauty, measured proportions, and reserved figures to capture the individual personality of each subject. Beauty standards of the Renaissance era conformed to classical ideals, and seen in the portraiture and the female ideal in the Renaissance art, the exaggeration of physical features like pale skin, thin eyebrows, a high forehead, and a round body were accentuated through portraits such as the Birth of Venus, which depicts the Roman goddess of beauty emerging out of a clamshell after her birth. As the embodiment of beauty, women were expected to look like her. With their thin eyebrows, long blonde hair, and a much thicker body, she could not be so much more different than the ugly duchess. Within the commonness of female nudity in paintings, the focus on small imperfections shaped females' ideas on the beauty to conform to finding value in their appearances rather than their individuality. With beauty standards that set the standard for the ideal woman, one might find themselves comparing themselves to these unrealistic standards, such as Elisabetta and Simona in Rizvan's Nicolsu's The Imposition of Beauty, where they agree that when people like the photographs they upload to Facebook, they feel happier, more specifically to comments on their beauty and admiration. Statements like, "What a beauty," or "What a beautiful lady," comes in large repetitive quantities, which both serves as white noise to individuals who seek validation, but also rarely brings comments complimenting the person themselves, like how they style their hair or choose a particular palette of makeup, which can make the person feel valued in their efforts instead of how they look. And with fitness culture in the Western world, quote, individuals are currently attempting to administer in a confident and autonomous way the resources of their bodies, representing a popular embodiment of the more elitist and classical ideals of European culture, a pure and perfect body in modern context. And we can see similar themes like this in the Mona Lisa, the portrait of a lady in yellow, to countless other depictions of Venus looking elegant, flowing, and graceful, which plays into the ideas of symmetry and proportion, and most of all, undetainable perfection. And while all of these portraits are great in their own respect, nothing is unique enough to get one thinking about why the paintist made it, what details hide behind the surface, and what they actually mean. Compared to the youth of earlier paintings, the Duchess is a horrendous figure. She has a receding hairline and an aged face which speaks to a lost youth. But her ugliness is just a distraction from the vanity that covers her. The Duchess, dressed in aristocratic fashion, plays into the idea that she is trying to cover up her ugliness with expensive clothing. However, her clothing is in the traditional Bulgarian fashion, which was outdated by the time of release. The corset also pushes her wrinkled breasts up beyond the appropriate manner for the time, which alludes into the idea of women's bodies being viewed as objects of pleasure rather than being appreciated for their individuality. The red flower in her hand also symbolizes engagement, which is ironic considering the ideal figure would be desire for the youth and beauty, which is not at all what the Duchess looks like. Her age makes fun of women for trying so hard to preserve their youth and keeping up to beauty standards which are always changing. And with beauty relying so much on physical appearance, trying to stop the natural aging process is like trying to remain the ideal of beauty forever, which is impossible, which is why the Duchess speaks out to how beauty is not timeless, fragile, and vain because they're constantly changing, and how it is vain to appreciate something on the surface that does not contribute any value to society. In the modern world today, where beauty standards have drastically evolved over time, we can see this in examples like Roger Scruton's novel, Beauty, A Very Short Introduction. He critiques that many people seem to live in an aesthetic vacuum, filling their days with utilitarian calculations, and with no sense that they are missing out on higher life, and that appreciation of the arts is a secondary to the exercise of aesthetic interest. With a focus on the outside and not on the inside, the time spent on the next procedure, the next makeup trend, or the next big fashion move causes things like music, education, nature, or history to remain underappreciated, like the endless cycle of beauty, which demands a critique of the body, stress to afford financial trends, and also being left in misery for not being the best, until the appeal fades off and the interest shifts onto the next big thing. But with art like the Duchess, we can't help but feel like fools sometimes who are trying to cover up the ugly when really it's society that reinforces the beauty. If we keep chasing what we fall, if we keep chasing this idea that being beautiful is the only way to be taken seriously, being appreciated, it drives attention away from your personality, accomplishments, and gets in the way of our personal goals. An example of this would be me wanting to get a PhD. But all of a sudden, being surrounded in a day where media constantly critiques every single body issue, every encourages people to get all these procedures, it becomes an invasive part of my life. And we end up doing things like plastic surgery, Botox, and continuous procedures that never improves our own personal images. With time focused on these superficial ideals, the time we could have spent making ourselves happier ends up making us feel dispensable. This is why The Ugly Duchess is a reminder that surface beauty is not as important as we think it is. It's fleeting, and no matter what we do, we can't avoid it, even if we wear pounds of makeup, do endless numbers of surgeries, or wear pretty clothes. We've spent the money on things that could have been used to help other people, get an education, get a job, find hobbies, but instead we're left following unrealistic depictions of art. Artistically speaking, with a consistent and limited color palette limited to hues of green, blue, brown, red, and white, the Duchess looks exceptionally plain, considering aristocrats were typically surrounded by endless flurries of golden riches. This serves to emphasize the women and eliminate any unnecessary details. From her imperfections to her extravagant fabrics, the Duchess prompts the audience to consider the relationship between the internal and external beauty. Her influence echoes into contemporary art and challenges us to evaluate our perceptions of beauty by embracing diversity and individuality. This painting, deviating from the norm, laid the groundwork for a more inclusive and accepting approach to beauty in the modern age, which concludes the story of a timeless piece that has left an indelible mark on the evolution of beauty. And as a last message, I refer to the story of The Ugly Duckling from author Hans Christian Andersen. Made in the 1800s, centuries after Mastis, is another work of art that shows society's judging eye against physical appearances and follows a journey to self-realization. And it is when the duckling finds acceptance within people that can see him beyond his feathers that we learn to accept people for their qualities, their values, and their relationships.